Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass. Thank you for watching this Ag Forecast brought to you by Agrible, the makers of Morning Farm Report. Our software gives growers the insights to make the best decisions possible about their operations. Let's begin by taking a look at the storm reports from the Storm Prediction Center on Sunday, the 5th of November. We've been talking about, at least at our last video update last Thursday, about how all the ingredients were coming together as a cold front kind of draped to the south here across the eastern Corn Belt. That was going to serve as our trigger for getting some storms to erupt. We then had pretty strong moisture transport out of the Gulf of Mexico. You combine that with the destabilized atmosphere and a lot of wind shear, and you're going to get a lot of severe weather. And that's exactly what happened. 149 reports of severe weather as of late in the evening on Sunday, most of which were strong wind reports. We'll take a look at those in a moment, but we did have 9 reports of tornadoes. And right here in western Ohio, in this region here, we actually had reports of 8 injuries so far. We're going to be seeing what some of the damage looks like as tomorrow gets here on Monday, and we can really see how bad things were. But this was, this was a reminder that you can get severe weather at any time of year. When those ingredients come together, it'll pop. Now, we also know that this part of the Corn Belt's been delayed in harvest. A lot of that's been due to a lot of rain. So as we watch this animation of the storms on Sunday afternoon, getting into evening, we can see that we had a lot of what we call training thunderstorms. These are storms that follow one another. And when they do that, they can produce some localized, very heavy rain and then, of course, flooding. Some of the storms were really quite nasty. We see here as we kind of watch the animation again some kind of leading edge single-celled kind of storm systems that kind of merge into one big long line. In fact, watch up here there to see that squall line that goes through parts of Ohio there. That was responsible for a lot of those strong and severe wind reports that we saw here across the northern part of Ohio. Watch it again right in through there. See it line out? Beautiful MCS, but those do a lot of damage. But the thing is, we brought a lot of rain into this area, and these storms are going to continue to delay harvest as we get into the beginning of our new week here. I just want to show you one thing really quickly about some of these storms. Let's watch these that went through parts of southern Indiana right here, this big supercell. That supercell on our new GOES 16 satellite looked like this. And I'll be honest, it's just breathtaking to see our storms with our new high-resolution instruments. I just wanted to show you that from outer space, while these things are doing so much destruction on the ground, we are learning so much about them from these new images here. So these storms were probably somewhere between 40 and 50,000 feet tall, and that anvil cloud that you see spreading off to the east, that just shows you how strong that wind shear is. But watching images like this can get you kind of dizzy, so let's move on. Now, the last 10 days has really been wet for the eastern Corn Belt. We can really see that getting all the way from parts of the Dakotas, but really getting into Minnesota, Wisconsin, then over to Michigan, and then, of course, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and then Kentucky, Tennessee. These states have been very, very wet for the last 10 days, and that is just keeping folks out of the field. So our big question is, does the pattern really change much to allow this to dry out in the near term? So as we always do, let's take a look at the upper levels of the atmosphere, get a picture of our trough ridge systems moving through the next 10 days. So starting back over on Monday, a big feature we have to be watching the interplay with other features is this broad trough over the Hudson Bay. And that is what's going to keep the eastern Corn Belt cool after that front passes through. And what we have to watch over the coming days, so this is getting into Tuesday, we're going to stay cool across much of the Corn Belt through the middle of the week. And then we're actually going to see another kind of round of that upper level trough swinging through, really just, like I said, keeping the week cool. But what I'm really getting kind of thinking a lot about, I should say, is what's going on off the west coast. You see, we've been paying close attention to this ridge feature that's been in the Bering Sea and what it's done to kind of the trough ridge pattern downstream, as we like to call it. And what we're seeing in the GFS model, and this is also echoed in the European model, is that by the weekend, we're going to be watching for a trough to develop off the west coast of the United States. And a couple things happen here. When troughs tend to develop on the west coast, they tend to push a weak ridge into the center part of the country. That tends to mean things warm up if there's not a big, deep trough sitting over the Hudson Bay. So pretty tight pattern here in terms of our 500 millibar heights. But once Friday gets here, what I see is that first trough moves through the middle part of the country, and will be this shortwave trough you see I'm kind of highlighting here. That'll be our next precipitation maker for the Corn Belt. So for a lot of folks in the Corn Belt, a drier week ahead until that comes through. But watch as we have that colder air kind of reloading off the west coast. Again, a big kind of broad ridge in the middle part of the country. What's the interpretation? We're going to go up, down in terms of our temperature anomalies, those being differences from normal, at least for the next several days. And you can clearly see here that as I get into Tuesday, this is now the 14th, we still again see the dominant feature here kind of east of the Hudson, and then again that Gulf of Alaska trough that's really going to be the interplay to give us what's going to happen here in the middle part of the country. So these are the big things I'm watching, and they're all kind of moving, which is good. Nothing really too blocked up at this point. Now, this animation is going to show you the 24-hour accumulated precipitation through the next 10 days. So if I get us out here to Monday at noon, this includes all the rain that fell Sunday from noon to Monday at noon. So if we kind of step forward here, what we see is that by the time we get into Tuesday, getting into Wednesday, we see that a lot of the Corn Belt's going to spend this week relatively dry. Here we are 6 a.m. on Thursday. Now, here we are Friday, Saturday. We're getting into Saturday now. And the next thing we're really going to be watching out for is Saturday into Sunday is the development of that new system coming on that trough that's kind of coming into the northern Great Plains. So that means a lot of folks in here are going to have a drier week until we get into next weekend when this next feature comes through. So I think we should be making up some progress on harvest. Although remember, we just dumped a lot of rain across Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, these states over here. And therefore, this is going to be a couple of days of drying out before I think folks are going to be comfortable enough to get back in the fields. But, with this time of year, we do have quite a bit of haste when getting the crop out, so we'll see how much progress is made this week. In terms of temperatures, here's just a new map, a series of maps I'm generating. The reds on these maps show warmer than average conditions, and blues are colder than average, and they step forward in about 6-hour time increments. So if I get us all the way out to Monday at noon, we can see where that front's really occupying. We have a pretty chilly Corn Belt, I should say, getting all the way back to very cold up here in parts of the Dakotas where that cold air kind of originated. You can see Tuesday we hang on to the cool. As I said, getting all the way through the end of our week, we really try to keep much of the Corn Belt near average to cooler than average. But with each one of these little pulses, coming into the West Coast, we start to build in some warmer temperatures into the center part of the country. That was that ridge feature I was talking about. But I think that if you're in the eastern part of the Corn Belt, your next 10 days carries a higher chance of being cooler than average than warm. But we do see this getting out into about the 15th, so mid-month. We kind of kept talking about this mid-month warm-up. It's really starting to show up in the short-range model runs here. We can maybe just see a bit of a ridging event in the center part of the country. So I'll be on the lookout for this evolving, but until then you can see that we're going to keep a lot of the Corn Belt cool. Okay, let's finish up this video by talking about South America. The map on the left shows soybean production by state, and we know that Mato Grosso, our biggest producing state, and as we kind of go through here, Goiás, Paraná, Rio Grande do Sul, those are the other big ones, and so is Mato Grosso do Sul. So the point is where are these states in terms of planting progress? And you can look for a lot of different sources for these numbers, but basically the big story is that Mato Grosso and Goiás, these two locations are certainly behind in terms of planting, as are the Tocantins, which is right here. So this northern growing region's behind because it's been very dry. You can see Mato Grosso has been dry. Look how dry it's been in Goiás, which is right in through here, and the Tocantins, which is here. Whereas the southern growing regions have been very wet. You can see on my map of the last 30 days of precipitation, expressed as a percent of normal, it's been wet down here. So all of this basically means that the country is not on pace like it was last year. And remember, last year was record-setting for Brazil. So this, again, kind of takes the top end off of Brazil's potential this year. You can think of it the same way as us having planting delays, being either too dry or too wet. Now, I want to show you another perspective on this. Now, this is what we call a global vegetation health index, and most of this is satellite derived. When you're looking at this, this gives us a bigger picture. These values are not going to be perfectly, representative of what's going on the ground. But basically, the closer you get to 100, the better the vegetative health index. So you get into these colors, things are not looking so good. Now look, November 4th of 2017, look at Brazil's northern growing regions. We're down here on this scale. Compare that to a year ago, didn't see quite as much kind of, these colors. It looked a lot healthier. So what we're seeing here is a pretty big difference over 2016. And remember, 2016 was their best year on record. But I will show you this. We've been discussing this quite a bit over the last week or so. We notice that the South American convergence zone is established, and what that's doing is it's going to be putting rain down in those very, very dry regions. But remember, this isn't going to make an immediate impact where they're going to get in and get everything planted because it's raining. This rain is going to delay planting as well. So we got to be on the lookout for what this means for Brazil. One of the things that I'm keying in on here is that this is going to really impact, I think, the safrinha crop, which for Brazil is the corn crop. So I think we need to be watching out for that as the season progresses. And with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this forecast video. We hope you look forward to Agrible's next ag forecast coming out on Thursday morning. To get morning farm report for your operations, complete with a daily email that shows you a snapshot of your field conditions each morning, go to morningfarmreport.com. Sign up for a free account. Full grower accounts are free if you sign up for our Sustainable Yield program or for growers who work with ADM merchandisers. So until Thursday, have a great week. Thank you.